Did you get the memo? Most of us at some point in our lives have been the recipients of memoranda, or memos for short. But what is a memo exactly? It's a particular type of document that's used to communicate critically important information to internal organizational audiences. There are two general categories of memos. The first category is the process directive, which is the type of memo that tells people whenever there's a new policy or procedure or a change in policy or procedure. A second type of memo is the persuasive proposal, in which someone sends a message to someone else in the organization in an attempt to persuade them to consider a particular course of action. Now, because memos are integral elements in organizational function, they're considered to be a part of every organization's legal documentation by the courts. So memos should always be carefully composed and distributed to all relevant parties using formal organizational communication networks. Nevertheless, it's easy to understand that the distribution tends to go in either a vertical or a horizontal direction. Vertical distribution can be either downward from superiors to subordinates or upward from subordinates to superiors. Horizontal distribution refers to distribution among people at the same level on an organizational hierarchy. Sometimes memos travel cross-channel among people in different departments. Now, the most important question, at least from your point of view, is probably, how do I format a memo? Well, most major organizations produce special memo letterhead, and it often has a space for you to insert important information. However, you can also choose a memo template right in Microsoft Word. The letterhead in this case simply indicates that you're looking at a memo and not something else. Memos always include a line at the beginning that tells who the memo is directed to, another line that shows who the memo is from, a line telling the date in which the memo was sent, and they always include a subject line to give the reader an indication of what this particular memo is about. Now, when you actually write the text of the memo, you should keep it short. No more than 1 page is the very best, 2 pages at a maximum. Text should be arranged in blocks for readability. Sentences should be kept short and to the point, and if you have to list a number of items, it's best to use bullet points rather than wordy descriptions. Distribution of memos can either take place on traditional paper or they can be sent as email attachments. Now, as I said before, memos can be used to send several different types of messages. The most common messages are routine messages. Before you ever send out your memo, it's a good idea to first consider whether the message even warrants a memo. Too many memos can lead to a lack of attention, so we do have other options. We can send a quick, unformatted email or even make a phone call. If a memo is warranted for a routine informative message, then a direct organizational pattern should be used to get your message across clearly and concisely. State your point in the first sentence. What is it that you want? What's going on? Then follow with details and explanation. This direct message pattern is best for vertical communication, especially upward communication, as managers often prefer for people to get to the point so they can move on. It's also best for introducing complex proposals that do not require strong persuasion. You start with the major recommendation, express it in a single sentence, and then provide a brief rationale for your recommendation. Finally, you add additional detailed supporting evidence if needed. Indirect messages can also be sent using a memo. However, one should be very careful when deciding to use an indirect pattern, since the short format of a memo often doesn't allow enough space to do a good job justifying your position up front. And of course, some bad news messages are simply best presented in person. The memo format does not include either a salutation or closing, since this information is provided in the header. However, it is nice to finish up with a positive closing sentence, perhaps thanking the reader, or reiterating a call to action indicating what needs to happen next. Now, some final thoughts. Memos should always be thoroughly proofread before they're distributed. You should check your spelling, grammar, format, and readability. Ask yourself, are my sentences clear? Are they relatively short? Did I include active verbs and write in active voice sentence construction? Did I include subheadings or bullets where appropriate? Did I provide sufficient white space to make the memo easy to read? If you do these things, you will write memos that people will enjoy reading.